Hello again. It's evening my time now, and I know you're looking for some more practical things to get started on in the next couple of weeks until we can have another meeting. So I'm going to just kind of jump over some of the philosophy and the history and all of that, and give you some more of the hands-on of what you can start thinking about and working on. And I'd like to go back to that video that we saw a little piece of from, I don't know if it's a school in Kenya or Tanzania, but I'd like to go back to that one because in that video, you see how the children are very independent. You can see the two guides, the two adults in the room are just sitting off to the side, and you don't actually even see them interacting with anyone during the 3 minutes that we watched that we can see. The video goes on, and I didn't particularly like what what went on afterwards, but this first part is just great, and that is exactly what I see in my experience with Montessori with the children. Is these children were very connected to their work, and you see them putting things back. You see them knowing exactly what they're doing. And the beautiful thing about Montessori materials, as I mentioned before, is that they are kind of self-correcting. They teach the child almost in an independent way. We'll talk about each material as we go along, and whatever you're able to have, then of course we will go over that in a lot of detail. But I'd like us to start by just watching that and seeing how some of the children, I mean, some of them are very active, and yet you can see that they're very purposeful and they're very aware of what they're doing and very focused. And certain ones that are actually sitting down, you can really see how absorbed in their material they are. And that was something that Maria had no idea would happen. But in fact, the teachers were telling her how calm the children were, and she didn't believe it at the beginning, but then she came in and observed and saw for herself. And she even says in her writings that she just put her hand on her heart and said, "Who are you?" Like she knew that something new and precious had been unlocked for these young children. And it was just absolutely not something she expected or had ever been seen before. But it was merely a situation of organizing things for the children so that they could be so independent. And that's what they showed her from the very beginning, that they wanted to really participate in life. They just needed someone to provide materials and show them how, and they could be so capable. One of the most important things that we'll be talking about is that I think I've already mentioned is the child's sense of order. This is something that is very strong in young children. As I say, it supports their ability to adapt to their environment wherever they are. They absorb the language, the customs, everything about the culture and where they live. And Maria said the child incarnates. It literally becomes a part of who they are. It's why our home is so precious and important to us, where we begin our life. So let's begin with that video, just to remind you, and then this way it will be recorded for you to review it again later. Let me see if I can do this properly.
Afriki denu wilila kayewa sinayala yoro janta bala yalla yalla ani fenyini ni ma fen soro ina fenye folo folo onye be bismillah oronyala jatiki yalla anta mana kamedo indafe si utakauku jatiki ya temfe Afriki denu kola sekina koluye wala so sumade ni yenye Afriki denu yame ko deme ba do neme kanyeshi woluma ede I say ede Africa ede Destination Africa, corruption, destination Africa, gouvernance et ensablée d'Africa, les guerres et génocides Africa. United Nations aussi a décidé dans son programme de développer Africa, diminuer sa pauvreté, diminuer sa pandémie du sida, diminuer le décès de ses enfants, diminuer tout ce qu'elle doit, toi, maman. Africa. Aider. I say aider Africa.
So you do notice that the adults also are, what they are doing is observing. And, you know, if there's something that a child is needing help with, or if a child might be abusing the material, you know, because it is the children's choice of what they are doing, it's very easy in the Montessori context to, you know, say, well, you know, it seems like you don't want to do this, work with this material because you're not doing it correctly. You know, you try correcting them. If that doesn't work, then, you know, it's very easy to just say, well, let's find something that you really do want to do, because it seems like you don't want to do this. So it's very much a self-correcting kind of container for the child. And, you know, when people ask me about discipline, I always say, I mean, it is really so easy in some sense, in a huge sense, actually, because of the children having so much choice. And, you know, you can just see how calm and focused and happy they are. And so there's honestly so much less difficulty that comes up. Now, it's interesting, at the beginning of that video, you might notice the girl that's sitting on the mat, and she has not gone inside, and she kind of has her hand on her shoe, and she's watching the other ones. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's a little gal that she came to school, and she's kind of in a mood, and she's not really wanting to take her shoes off yet. and you see no one is bothering her. It doesn't matter. It's not like the whole group is doing something. So she can sit there and take her time. And, it can be real typical for a child like that to sit there for 20, 30 minutes. I mean, I've even had children sit for an hour with something like that and just, you know, they're happy. They're not uncomfortable. It's their choice as to when they decide to remove the shoes and come inside, but no one tries to make them do it one way or another. They might be invited. Another child might even say something to her, but I know when children are in that kind of a mood, the best thing is often just to allow them to just be and make that decision themselves. So I'm going to show you a few little still photos. I think I'll do that, and then I'll show you still photos of my classroom and talk to you a little bit about some of the materials. So let's see here. So here, actually, this is my youngest granddaughter when she was 2. She's still in my class. She's 4 now. And I will just tell you that the photos I'm about to show you are of children in the school where I teach. The other photos you're going to see are of children from quite some time ago, close to 10 years ago, I would say. Because at some point I said, to me, the child is really at prayer in the Montessori classroom. This is really their personal, private, in some sense, work. And so to be taking pictures of it and sharing it all over just did not feel right to me. So we have not taken photos in the classroom for quite some time, other than maybe a few discrete photos of my granddaughters. And I did have permission from the parents of the other children that you'll see. But the main thing I want you to see here too is that absorption, the way that Emma is just so completely focused on what she's doing in fitting these graduated cylinders into the block. And since we do have this material in front of us, I want to mention to you that you will see, and there was a lot of it in the video that you just saw, a lot of this wooden material, which, does cost something to start off with. But this cylinder block that she's working with, that's the name of it, a cylinder block. It's actually been used by children for 60 years. It's been in my possession for about 30 years, 30 plus, actually 35 years. But when I came to the school that this material came out of, the school was already about 25 years old. And so a lot of the materials that I have in my classroom have been used by children for 60 years, 60. So, that just speaks to the durability of them, and that it really is an amazing investment that you can make. And I know we have some sources of income that we can get some of these materials, and I can really help you to know which materials are the most used. And this is one of them. There are 4 blocks, and each one is a little different. But in terms of the child developing their fingers and their focus for the youngest children. This is one of the key materials that you can have. Stop that share. I'm going to try to share the pictures correctly this time. Sometime I'll learn to make a slideshow so we won't have to go back and forth like this, but so I'll just show this one. And, you know, just again, the development of the hand, of the using of the fingers to do very, to use the fine motor skills is something that you can imagine. Okay, that doesn't look like it's sharing. Hold on. I'm going to take that down. Okay, so let me just stop this one. Okay. This is the problem I had before. So let me see if I can do it. Let's see. Well, now that picture went away. All right, let's try this again. So you heard me speak about it. This is a child of about 4. This is actually my oldest granddaughter, and this is like 10 years ago almost. But you can see how even a very young child can, you know, she's been through 3 other activities before this. And now she's doing something that's just as detailed as an adult might do. And it just brings so much joy and focused attention. And you can imagine pride for the child, and just a real strong sense of self. And, you know, not every child will be as detailed as the next. This is one thing that that we notice, is that even though each child has a strong sense of order, we do see differences. Some children, from the very first time you show them something, they want to lay it out very perfectly, and they're very disturbed if something's crooked. And the next child, you know, you kind of have to show them that. But they all show, to me, they all show a very basic kind of orderliness. It's just some of them are more, as we say, fastidious, you know, more concerned about every tiny little thing being just right. And that's just a difference in personality. But they all have a really good sense of order. And for each person, their best sense of order will be right now in this phase of life. So, so we'll be getting into well, I was going to just show you this last one, which is of a child involved in some actual academic work. Nope, that's not showing them. You see it? Let's see here. Let's stop that share. I don't know why it just pauses it. Okay. All right. So now we're going to show one more. And this is a child involved in language work, which there was a child in the video we just saw. Why? That. Sorry. Don't know why that didn't want to go away. I don't know. Doesn't want to show this one for some reason. I don't know why. Stop the sharing. All right. A little concerned about what we're seeing here. I'm going to try to go to a different different photo now. And let's see what happens. Okay. Finally, something else. So this photo is just shows some of those materials that you can see. The children can just use them over and over and over again. You know, one of the things, once the child has been shown how to work with something, then of course, you know, the adults are observing them to see that they're not being rough with the material, they're not throwing it down or banging it into things. And so, you know, but if you are watching out for those things, then as I say, there are quite a number of things in this photo that have been used for several decades on a daily basis by these young children, and they are still in great shape. And the children still gain so much from them. So I'm going to really focus on an area that we call practical life, and because that's really where the child begins to develop these powers of focus and concentration, and even you know, sometimes parents ask me about their 2-year-olds, because we take children when they're 2.5, the 2.5-year-olds, or even a very young 3-year-old coming in, just learning to take their material to a mat or to a table and do something with it. Sometimes, you know, they don't even finish the work, and that's okay. And then to carry it back to the shelf and put it back in the right place. Just that whole process. And if they're sitting in a chair, then they are to push their chair in, so we're not going to be tripping on the chairs. So just learning that skill, that basic Montessori classroom skill of carrying something with 2 hands to a table or a mat, working with it, and then returning it to the shelf is a big work for a 2-year-old, a 2.5-year-old, or a young 3. And you can see how, even though there's so much freedom in the Montessori environment, there's so much structure as well. And the structure is found in this orderliness, and, you know, the appreciation for order is with us all of our lives. We adults can recognize that when, you know, our home is a mess, or, you know, the garden is untidy, that it messes with your mind a little, and you really notice it when you spend the time to restore things, return things to where they need to be, to clean up the garden, whatever that is. We just feel such a sense of peace and happiness when things are restored to order. And so the children just have a very natural affinity to that, as I say, that Maria Montessori noticed. And it's throughout this whole time frame of birth to 6 years of age that children have this very strongly. And so they readily will work within this order, and even the order of, you know, when someone has a material, I cannot choose it. I can only choose it if it's on the shelf. If the person has returned it to the shelf, that's when I may choose it. But choosing it off of someone else's table or coming and taking over someone's work is not something that is allowed. so, that's again where you see the structure of the environment protects everyone's freedom and allows for all of this free movement and choice. So on this shelf, you see, actually, you see two button frames. The one on the left, I mean, a young 3-year-old readily can learn to do this. And then, as their fingers get stronger, we go to smaller buttons. I also have a buckling frame. You can have snapping frame. Whatever children have on their clothing is something that you want to try to have some kind of a dressing frame where they can practice doing those things. And just for you to know too, that a 3-year-old especially will just do the buttons over and over and over again. She might have mastered it. I mean, clearly she's mastered it, but just the pleasure of just doing it over and over again, she's not doing it to accomplish it so much as she's just doing the buttons, for example, or stringing the beads. You see the little beads stringing on the left there on the top shelf, stringing the beads over and over again, just because it's so enjoyable. And we see this a lot. Next to the bead stringing, you see the burlap sewing, and I'll take you to the actual classroom next time and show you that the child is just using a very blunt, big needle with some burlap and some yarn to work on that. And once they get proficient with that, typically 3.5 to 4 is when we would move on to a sharp needle and they begin to do some embroidery sewing. Yeah, I have a slide of different sewings that they do that I don't have it loaded right now. And then the next basket is that beading sewing that the child was doing that I showed you a few minutes ago, a 4-year-old. And you see some transfer activities. Those are great ones on the next shelf. Transferring beans using a spoon from one bowl to the other. Then the next one is pouring rice back and forth. And this just gives the child practice in getting all of something into the other one and not spilling any of it. And this gets them ready for actual water pouring. So the third activity on that second shelf is where we actually fill one of the pitchers halfway with water and the child practices pouring it back and forth. And then they go on and use a funnel. And that transfers into some other activities that I'll be showing you. But I just wanted to give you some starting things that we work with. And you also will notice here that there's virtually no plastic. We try to use natural materials. They're so much more pleasing, and the children will be more careful with them because they see them as things of beauty versus things that are plastic that can just be thrown around and it doesn't matter. One of the first little classroom that I had, a parent walked in and said, "Oh, she was horrified that there was so much glass in the room." And she said that she could never enroll her child in a place with all that glass. And all these years later, I just have to laugh because it's so rare that the child will drop something. And even then, very often it doesn't break. But even if it does, it's a learning experience. And, um, again, the child just, um, so much carefulness is instilled in them by being given things that are significant, that are beautiful, that can break, and it's so much more pleasing for their hands as well. So I'll show you the other one of the other main shelves. I realized that I had a video that would show you the little mop and the little cleanup broom and brush that they use, but I could not get that video to load up here, so I'm just going to show you still pictures. But here's the other main practical life shelf. Let's see. This goes. Yes, good. All right, so here we see again on the top shelf, you can see there's a lacing frame. Again, the children will wear shoes that tie, so they would have a reason to learn how to lace the shoes. That might or might not be something that your children would need or want to learn. And then next to it is the bow tying. I see that it's a little untidy from the child that last did it, but that's that child learning how to tie the bows properly. And then on that top shelf, you see some of the paper activities, actually that one, and I'm going to go to the middle shelf now, where the child is using a little brush and some glue in a shell and gluing paper scraps onto a larger piece of paper, and they love to do that. And as they get older, they do little collages where they tear the paper into very small pieces and fill in a figure with it. You can see a couple of pairs of scissors. I would work with you on how I progress the children with their scissor cutting. They really, really enjoy that. But even the youngest children come in and just take one of the scraps out of the basket you see to the left, and just will sit there for, oh my goodness. I've had little ones just sit there for an hour cutting little pieces. And they get to keep it all picked up and put it back in the basket and get another piece, and just really perfecting the skill of cutting. And then we go on and they cut lines and they cut shapes, and then they cut simple animals, and then very detailed things they progress to. And then next to the scissors is also a hole puncher. That's something they really enjoy, just a little hole punch, single punch. And next to that is some pencils for just coloring. And then on the top shelf is a more refined kind of gluing, where they're gluing beans on the paper now. So you can see how their fine motor skills have to be better for that work. That's more like a 4-year-old work. And then the collage gluing is next to it. And once again, on the bottom shelf is some activities for the youngest children coming in, so they have something that they don't really need a lesson on, but they can just bring to their workspace and have a go at it, and then practice returning it to the shelf. And around the corner, you see a green apron hanging on a chair. That's our painting, a little watercolor painting area. We have natural clay for them to work with. They do hand washing in a basin just for practice, just for fun. They scrub the tables, they do wood polishing, and yeah, like I say, I will show you those in more detail next time. I think I would like to I do have some pictures of the language area. That's the other main area that I would recommend for you to develop. Language, these children are speaking, obviously, but moving on to refining their spoken language, and this allows them to be more attentive to their environment. So on this shelf, you can see on the second and bottom shelf that we have series of cards that have a rubber band around them. And so there's, snakes and turtles, frogs and lizards you can see there, and some mammals. And then on the bottom shelf, fruits and vegetables and instruments and tools. And then there's a whole bunch more on the next shelf. And I can talk to you about some sources for those possibly. But these are animals, and as far as the animal cards go, they're animals that are found in our area. So, anything that you can provide for them, they really enjoy being able to focus on particular things and discriminate, like, the different vegetables. Actually, on the far left, on the bottom, are fruit cards, and those were actually hand drawn by one of the first parents that I worked with back 35 years ago, and she made a whole series of fruit cards for us. And she also made the little flower cards that are on the other side of the vegetables. So those are hand drawn. So if someone in your community is able to draw, then that's a way that you can develop cards. And but there are some sources also that we can investigate for you to create some card materials. Because as I say, the children love to see that, well, it's a snake, but which kind of snake is it? And to see, discriminate all the differences. And when they start to have a name for a different type of snake, a black racer snake, or a king snake, or a rough green snake, then when we have a name for something, then we really know that thing and know what characteristics to look for. And so these language card materials are very fascinating and enjoyable for the children. And the way I work with them, the children do bring a mat and sit somewhere in front of me and just hold them up one at a time. And I give the name, and the child will repeat it. And over time, they learn the names. The picture I could not show you was a boy of 5 who was actually reading the names of some sea creatures. We have some sea creature cards. And so you can see on this top shelf, the little drawers, and in each drawer would be tickets with the label, or I should say labels would be in these drawers for these different sets of cards. So in other words, there would be a drawer with the snake card labels or the turtle card labels, so that once the child is writing and then reading, they can read these labels and match them up to the cards. And then they do really wonderful projects with that they enjoy so much. So let me show you the other language shelf to kind of get you started thinking about it. And then we'll close this video. So this is the shelf that the youngest children also work with. Down on the bottom, you can see 2 chalkboards. We use the chalkboards to learn writing. But also even the very youngest children come in, and of course they love to draw on the chalkboard. And that's something that, is doesn't use paper and is a great way for them to be able to enjoy that sense of writing and drawing and coloring from the time they're very young. And then next to the chalkboards is a basket. And in that basket are objects. And the objects relate to each of the letters of the alphabet. So there's like a mirror, a little mirror in there, and a little apple in there, and a cow. And so what the youngest children will do is bring the basket to work again with the guide, with the teacher, and they will hold up the object, apple. We say the name apple. Apple begins with, and that's a little prompt to help them to hear that the first sound in the word apple is the ah. Or the first sound in cow is k, k. And so we go through it like that with them. And I mean, the little ones, sometimes they love it so much, they will go through the entire basket like twice or even 3 times. But this is the way that we work with the alphabet. And I know that you're working with your native language with the youngest children. And so we'll need to work on what those individual sounds are that you see next to the basket. The basket of objects is a basket of letters. And so each letter will be represented, or each sound will be represented by a letter. And we refer to these letters by just their sound. And we're using the small letters because that's mainly what the children see written. And we find that does not, I don't know if there's something like the ABCs in your language, but those are the names of letters. And we find that the children can readily distinguish that this letter makes a sound, and maybe the big capital letter, we just know it by its name. So in other words, like an A or an M or whatever it is, rather than the M or the ah, which is what the children will learn to associate with the small letters. And then you see some geometric figures with some square paper beside it and some pencils. And this is another really important work in the Montessori room, that the child will trace one of the red frames onto a piece of white paper, and then take the frame off and fill it in the best that they can. And this really develops their ability to work with a pencil on paper, to feel very comfortable moving a pencil across the paper and be very strong with that, preparing them for writing. Because I will take the screen share off now. Because what Maria Montessori, another thing that she was astonished to discover was that children had a sensitive period, she called it, for writing. Like they were just so driven to write between the ages of 3.5 to 4.5. And so she began to develop things to kind of help them. And the more she did that, the more the children just spontaneously started writing. And she did not have very much paper either. The children had chalkboards and chalk, but the little chalkboard wasn't enough for them. And so she tells the story that the children began to write all over the floor and the walls and everything else because they had so much writing in them. And I see it all the time. I think I had a slide, but I think it's off now. But I mean, it's not unusual at all for the children to come to me first thing in the morning. That's the first thing they want to do, is do some writing. And once they've learned their letters, they will sit there and they write the entire alphabet. And really, they write it like 5 times because I have little strips for them, and they will write the same letter 5 times across, 4 or 5 times across the page. And they will sit there and write the entire alphabet. It will take them about 45 minutes to an hour. And they just so focused, so happy, and that's the first thing they want to do in the morning. And so absolutely, I've just seen that sensitive period for writing that Maria discovered. I've just seen it over and over and over again. Well, I don't know how long I've been going, but I think that this video is quite enough for now. And I'll be thinking of you all the next 2 weeks, and I'll really look forward to catching up with you after that and seeing what questions you have. I'm going to see also if I can send a few documents to John that would give a listing of some supplies and materials and just various things. I'm going to see what I can send to him via email. But this will be it for the videos for now. And so many blessings.